Thanks very much, Mike. I've got one more session to moderate, and hopefully that third one you'll get my last name right. That'd be awesome. In January of 2015, this past January, two veteran Canadian B2B publishers joined together to create the largest business media company in Canada. Both Annex and Newcom brought their own expertise and brand loyal audiences and partnered to create a new company that will now oversee more than 125 Canadian B2B brands. Right now, we're about to hear from the two leaders who orchestrated this deal, why they did it, and what's in store for B2B media in Canada and beyond in 2016. So please welcome to the stage, Mike Fredericks, CEO, Annex Business Media. Mike. Welcome. Grab a water, grab a seat.
Good.
Next up, we've got Jim Glionna, CEO of Newcom. So give him a round of applause, Jim. Grab a water. There you go. Jim is such a pro. He's so dedicated that he's feeling a little bit under the weather and was yesterday and even the day before. So what do you think he did? What do you think he sacrificed so he could stay in bed and join us here today? What is the ultimate Toronto sacrifice that you could have made in the last 24 hours? He had tickets to the Jays game and didn't go. How about a round of applause for Jim and his commitment? All right.
The things I do for other people.
Yeah, that's right. Very grateful friends and family and employees. So to start, why don't we take a minute or so and just tell us a little bit more about yourselves. A lot of people here from out of town, maybe not familiar with Annex and Newcom.
Well, I started in 1969 selling advertising. Supposed to go to law school, but I didn't. Best move I ever made. And here I am, 45 years later. Or is it 46? I guess it's 46. I don't want to go into too much detail other than the fact that I worked in the business all of that time, pretty much as some breaks. I've worked in the United States for 20 years, worked in Canada for, I guess, 45 or 25 in the business. I think I've got a pretty good grasp on it. I do understand that it's going beyond me in terms of the digital side. I have a son who's 34 years old, and he's doing a great job, a very good job, and it's not just a father talking. And he'll take this business on. He and Mike will take this business on, and that's pretty much it without going into too much detail.
Great. So you're sort of a dual of the dual profession in terms of countries. You started off in what part of the States?
Well, I started off in Canada. I was born in Toronto and moved to the U.S. when I was 40 and came back here. Actually, I started the Newcom Business Media out of Detroit. I was living in the Detroit area. And I was back and forth for quite a long time. And my wife basically said to me, "You're spending half your time in Toronto now. I think I'd rather live there than here." Here I am.
That's right. Good.
Sometimes those personal things drive a lot of things.
Happy wife is a happy life. Awesome. Mike.
Well, as you can probably tell by our outfits, Jim and I are not identical twins. We are good business partners, and my company, Annex Business Media, has been around about 18 years. I worked in publishing probably close to the last 30 years, community newspapers and B2B, but also printers. But I did buy it in my own right 18 years ago, and I've been busy building it, obviously. I'm a chartered accountant by training. Took me about 6 years to figure out that's not what I was supposed to do when I grew up. So I think I'm a publisher now.
Awesome.
I'm getting there anyway, Tom.
And I don't think we're losing our minds. That was a whoop when you said chartered accountant. This is a B2B panel. Awesome. Okay, so let's just get into this deal because it was such a big deal when it happened in January of this past year. Can you tell everyone in the room a little bit about it was a complicated deal. You purchased the assets of Glacier Media. You split about 90% of those assets between the two companies, and the balance you put in a holding company. Discuss.
Okay, so it came to us late in 2013. It wasn't a transaction that we were, Annex, I was not interested in acquiring all the assets. We had some conversations about buying some. Jim is, I guess, been a friend for a number of years, on social basis more than business or anything specific, and he happened to call me out of the blue one day to say, how could I get a hold of some of these titles if they happen to come to market? And I happened to already be engaged in a conversation, and we worked through about, I guess, probably the better part of a year figuring out how to acquire what was a fairly large acquisition for either of us individually, but collectively made a lot more sense. And certainly there were things that were inside of the business that complemented Jim's company better than mine. I certainly didn't want to be a competitor of Jim's because he told you he's been at this for a long time, and I don't want to compete with him. So that's, from my perspective, how it came to be.
Very much.
And Jim, can you talk a little bit about what you decided to take out of those assets and what went into the holding company? And then we'll talk about what the plans are for that holding company.
Well, essentially, as Mike has pointed out, we've been friends for quite a while. We met each other through the business, but we never had directly competitive products before, and so our relationship was more of a personal friendship basis, so that we can share our thoughts and our ideas in the industry and on the business, et cetera, et cetera. But when this thing came along, it was very interesting to me. I wouldn't have done it if my son had not been in favor of it, because I'm not going to be around to fill the whole. I'm not going to be there to see this thing through all the way. I'm not planning on digging a hole for myself in the next 2 years or so, but I do think it's going to be something that Mike and Joe will be dealing with in the longer term. In terms of how we became involved in this, Mike has said a little bit about it, but it just really came down to splitting the assets and basically making sure that the EBITDA was as equivalent as you possibly could make it. We got it down to $30,000. I don't think we could have got it much closer than that.
Do you still owe me that?
I was under the impression you owed me.
Oh, okay.
So that left a number of products in the asset purchase that really, they not that they were didn't fit at all, but they weren't. We selected the products, or the assets that fit nicely, and then we had this group of assets left over. For example, I've got some directories. Mike's got a couple of directories, but they fit with the media that we already have. The biggest directory, being Scott's, is it's a substantial piece of business, and neither one of us really wanted to get into that business, because you're going to be in that business if you take it on, and it's a big number, and we don't want to set ourselves up for that. At least I don't, and I'm pretty sure Mike doesn't. So the Scots is the biggest piece of asset, is the biggest asset that remains in what we call the Newcom, or the Annex Newcom LP limited partnership, and then there are another group of publications, mainly publications, some contract publishing operations that are quite good, and then there's some that are marginally profitable, some that are marginally negative, some that are more than marginally negative. So we're gradually selling these off. They are for sale. Everything in that LP is pretty much for sale, and it might even be for sale to either Mike or I, because if one of us says, we get down to the final strokes and say, I don't think I'd mind having that particular asset. Okay, well, let's put a number on it and pay 50% into the LP.
Right.
So we could be buyers, but that's essentially what's going to happen. Our plan is to be to have the LP wound down by the end of next year.
Okay.
And on we go.
Good. So one of the things in the course of the research that I've done is sort of an unconventional potential plan is or making these assets available to owners operators to sort of give a leg up to potential potential business owners, much like, you know, Jim, in your case, you had when you started.
What's the question, Tom? Sorry.
The question is, are owners operators or the editors and publishers in charge of the companies in that corporation, would they be potentially given the products that don't suit your
so you're
needs?
talking about the limited partnership.
Limited partnership,
So
yeah.
we have, as Jim's pointed out, we've started the divestiture program. We announced that to all the staff in early August that we would be divesting of those products. We've had conversations with a number of the staff directly. A few weeks ago, within the past 2 weeks, we've announced the sale of 3 products to one of the senior operators that was involved with the business. We continue to have conversations with staff. So yeah, the answer is yes, Tom, is that we think it's ideal. I mean, I don't know that Jim and I have ever had this conversation, but I absolutely hate shutting anything down. If there's a marketplace, I want to figure out how to operate in it. Doesn't matter what size, and if I can't do it well myself, I'm happy for somebody else to have a go at it.
Great, great. Yeah, no, I wanted to bring that up because it's a wonderfully fresh way of doing business, especially in the B2B space. So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about streamlining the existing assets. How will it fit into each of your respective cultures and each of your respective operations, in terms of what you've acquired from those titles, from Glacier?
Well, that's an interesting question. As far as I'm concerned, and I think Mike would agree with me, each of our operations have different systems. I don't have the same systems that Mike has, and vice versa. The systems that we're running, the business information group of Glacier, are substantially larger than we would need to run a B2B operation. A lot of the systems were built around the directories. You needed a very large operating system to run the Scots. We don't need that. Whomever decides that, whomever the Scots directories go to will probably need those levels of infrastructure. That's been an issue, and not so much an issue, but it's been difficult in terms of integrating them, winding those down, getting ourselves disentangled from the systems that were existing, and those systems have been existing for quite some time, from the previous owner and from the previous owner. So we are gradually taking them into the systems and integrating them, and much of it is being basically eliminated. As far as culture is concerned, that's a different story. My company is smaller than Mike's, and Mike is also a printer, so he's integrated, he's got a bigger operation. For me, what we had before we bought these assets was not a large publishing organization. We did about $11 million in sales. And it basically was a family company. This business was corporate. And it's almost a culture clash. And I had never experienced the corporate world. Personally, I've been involved and I've known a lot of people, but I have not been intimately involved in the corporate world. And that's been a difficult transition, and it's not just for me, but it's for our people too. And when I say our people, I'm talking about the people who worked at Newcom prior to the purchase, and all of the new people that have come with it. This has tripled the size of my company, so it's a big move for me, and the culture has been the most difficult thing to deal with, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning about this. It's difficult. It's very, very different.
How about yourself, Mike? Is there, is there the Annex way, or is there an Annex way, the former Glacier way, and a third way, or is it even up for debate in terms of culture and integration?
I don't spend a lot of time worrying about the culture. I obviously have people that do. I'm about the integration of the processes and the people. We want them to be comfortable. There are, in any business that we've acquired, and our company has been formed through multiple acquisitions, probably about 30 different deals over the years. We learn something in every transaction. We think we're pretty good at what we do, and we work hard at best practices in our own enterprise, but we always find something that somebody else is doing, and we generally have an open mind to that. So hopefully we incorporate all the new practices. I think that also helps to engage the new people if you don't go in and change absolutely everything. We have a big belief in autonomy in our enterprise, pre-existing, and we like to pass it forward to anything that we acquire. So in general, the culture thing, it's very important obviously, but we kind of get it right. There's some difficulty in this particular one, Jim, because of the residual assets and the limited partnership, and everybody more or less figured it out. Look, Newcom doesn't want that, and Annex doesn't want it, so we're kind of the leftovers.
Right.
So there's definitely there's a challenge embedded in that of trying to make sure those people are still actively engaged and still productive, and to let them know when things are changing. So those would be the biggest challenges culture-wise.
Right. Jim, you and I, preparing for this call, talked a little bit about the sales operations challenges that you're facing based on how you did business and kind of what you're seeing in terms of patterns in B2B in Canada anyway. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of those discoveries and
you're getting into some sensitive territory, Tom.
I know. Well, people are here for controversy.
I don't know if this group can handle the truth.
They can handle the truth.
Well, the reality is, in Canada, that there was two major publishers that controlled the B2B market for many, many years. And they generally didn't do a bad job. But they, for the people for the Canadians in the room, that would be McLean Hunter, which was bought out by Rogers about 10 years ago, and Southam, which was bought by Hollinger, and then Glacier. The assets went to them, so the B2B assets. So these companies, for whatever, well, not for whatever reason, they saw their future in the broader world of media. In 1965, McLean Hunter, was when they went public, 90% of their business was B2B. It was probably no more than 15 years later, it was more like 10%. Might have been a little more, but it went down big time. They took the money from the public offering and went into the broader media and did a very good job, incidentally. Did a lot of, the shareholders made money, everybody made money in the deal. It was good. But the B2B operation tended to be left on its own at that point. At the end of the day, when it was a Rogers operation, the B2B division that was once a juggernaut with McLean Hunter, they probably represented 0.5% of the total revenue of Rogers. And without going through the same historical analogy with the Southern assets, the Southern B2B assets, the same thing there. These were two multinational corporations and had these B2B assets, which they were not particularly focused on. It was not where they were putting their money. This was essentially a redeployment of capital. The money that they were making on the B2B operations, which were profitable and continued to make money, but there was no reinvestment to speak of, and that money was just basically channeled up to the cash box. So what's really resulted in this, and I think it's going to be very good, I certainly, knowing Mike, I think I can speak for him, that these assets now are home. We are B2B publishers. That's what we do. That's how we make our living. And we will nurture these assets. We won't farm them. It doesn't make much sense to not farm, to farm and not seed. So that's what's going on now. The B2B world in Canada is no longer controlled by multinational, publicly traded corporations anymore. It's Mike and I and a lot of other hardworking individuals who have 1, 2, 3, 4, half a dozen magazines, know their markets, and hopefully do a good job for them. So that's been the change with this particular deal.
That's wonderful context. Thanks for that, Jim. Mike, what are some of your difficulties in selling B2B as far as revenue is concerned? Is it client direct in Canada with your titles? Is it still going down the agency route? What are some difficulties as far as revenue is concerned?
We have a mix, more skewed to direct than agency. I think the challenges exist more in the agency these days. Younger media buyers looking for the next widget. So we're constantly designing the next widget, trying to get it to market, try to make it make sense within the overall marketing landscape of B2B. So I think that's probably the big challenge, is to just stay on the front edge without bleeding off the side all your enterprise to stay very current with what's happening digitally.
Right. What about the opportunity for kind of bringing content back and reestablishing good editorial as part of a B2B title? Because you see a lot of examples of B2B titles where you just shake your head at the editorial quality of it. What are your thoughts there as far as both of your respective companies?
We don't have any of those, do we, Jim? I mean, I think, I don't know how many years ago, as I was leaving the accounting profession and started attending conferences, I would hear content is king, and you still can't say it any better than that, and it doesn't matter whether it's digital or whether it's an event or whether it's in your title. The commitment to content to your industry is that's your brand, that's your value, that's our view. It's very simple.
Jim?
Well, that's another interesting point, which gets down to some more basics. The couple of things have happened in the last number of years, and I think it's probably global. I don't think it's anything particular to Canada. The 15% agency commission is out the window, much as we used to hate the agencies, and probably still do. They were our friend because they made money on high rates. Why would they argue? And they're getting 15 points off of every piece of revenue that they placed. That's gone. There's no more advertising managers in the B2B world to speak of. You might find one somewhere. I haven't found them recently. Which means what's happened is the advertising manager title has been subsumed, integrated into broader title, which is probably Director of Marketing Services or something like that. So you've got this person who's the Director of Marketing Services, and he or she has somebody looking after the trade shows, somebody looking after PR, somebody looking after the advertising function, somebody looking after, well, possibly just generally supporting product marketing. And what happens with this combination, the marketing manager is not particularly focused on checking out how effective the media, the trade media is in delivering the audience that the company wants to reach. And you got the agencies who will go and tell the customer, I just bought you 12 pages of advertising, X number of spots on the websites, and so forth and so on, for half the price you were paying before. Oh, that's great. Well, how did you do that? Well, I went to this guy over here, Joe Blow, who's got an audit that wouldn't stand up in the face of any scrutiny, but the price comes down. The price now is king. How do you overcome that? The way I would overcome it, and the way I do overcome it, and the best I can, is to make sure that we have good solid relationships with the buyers. If you don't go and visit the buyers, visit them in their own office and build their confidence, make them feel that you are the right person. Plus, they'll start to listen to you when you show them high quality audits, when you show them high quality content, and you'll say, this is where you want to be. You wouldn't go to Bechuana Land and buy the second book in the market, would you? Why would you do it in Canada, the United States, Japan, Germany, wherever, in your own domestic market? This is the message that needs to be delivered to clear out a lot of these bottom feeders. You can't beat them on price. It's not possible.
Good. That's great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. How about a round of applause for these two icons of Canadian publishing?
Icon.
You are. Thank you.